obviously your childhood, you had this horrendous crash in motocross, which would have been obviously a traumatic experience for not just you, but your whole family.
When I was 15, I was on a 125cc bike. This one jump just caught me out. I was there fighting for my life because I stopped breathing for 9 minutes. I was airlifted to Salisbury Hospital. I was in a coma for 4 weeks. So,
what do you remember? When's the point of like actual clarity?
When the doctors told me that I was paralysed and obviously I wouldn't be able to walk, apparently my reaction, sort of covered my face, sorry. The team's goal is to be the first team of all disabled drivers to race on the main grid at Le Mans.
How far away do you think we are from that happening? Right.
Here we go.
Hi! Hi! And welcome back to Backseat Drivers Podcast. I'm just going to go straight in.
Okay.
All right. So give us, who are you? What's your story, Aaron?
So, Aaron Morgan. I'm now 33 years old from Basingstoke. My big backstory, I began schoolboy motocross racing when I was 7 years old. Funny enough, my granddad wanted to buy me a quad for Christmas, but mum and dad talked him out of it because they thought quads were dangerous, obviously, when they flip. And if they crush you, then you're sort of in trouble. But so they talked him into buying me a 50cc motorbike. Now, I went to my first race, like I say, when I was 7. And absolutely loved it. I fell off loads of times, but it was just absolutely, it was great. I couldn't believe I lucked into it. And as time went on, I just fell more and more in love with it. We did it every weekend for 8 years in total. As time went on and I got older, the bikes the road got, the engines got bigger. We travelled all around the country with it. We used to have a big motorhome.
Yeah.
So we used to go there on a Saturday night, have a barbecue, stay the Saturday night, and obviously wake up and race on the Sunday.
Yeah.
Then when I was 15, I was on a 125cc bike, funny enough, on Good Friday. Went to a track near Amesbury, which is one of my favourites, and one I'd done hundreds of laps on. And just this one day, it was only a practice day. Just one day, the jump on this, it was quite a jumpy track. This one jump just caught me out. Had a crash on it. I was there fighting for my life because I stopped breathing for 9 minutes. And it wasn't
9 minutes?
It wasn't until the paramedic saved my life, managed to pull my tongue out of my throat and get me breathing again.
My God. Not 9 minutes without oxygen.
Yeah.
Isn't it like after 4 or 5 that you can suffer severe brain damage as well?
Yeah, I've been incredibly lucky. So it wasn't just a spinal injury that I've had to deal with. So to add to it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I stopped breathing for 9 minutes, and then I was airlifted to Salisbury Hospital, and when I was there, obviously I was fighting to have the oxygen back, and obviously my brain as well. And then over that first night, the doctors, funny enough, tried tickling my feet. And noticed that I sort of wasn't responding,
Right.
And it was that which made them look into the potential that I could be paralysed. And
at this point, are you like conscious and aware, or sorry, did you just say you were in a coma?
Yeah. So
Right, okay.
I was in a coma for 4 weeks. So I went to Motocross on Good Friday and woke up a month later.
Jeez, what was that feeling like waking up?
It's all quite confusing, really.
I bet.
The brain has a very weird way of protecting the body. So my mum and dad, there's like a photo diary we've got at home of sort of my whole hospital stay, and there's photos where I'm clearly awake, but I have no recollection of them photos being taken.
It's a bit like, I remember watching a podcast. I mean, it's not the same, but it kind of is, with Richard Hammond. And when he had that like 300-mile-an-hour crash in that dragster, he said he had like really bad post-traumatic amnesia, where he would like read the same newspaper. Like apparently he was awake, but he can't remember any of it. He can't remember like the months basically after hospital, or even during hospital. And he said he'd pick up the same newspaper, like read the whole thing, and pick it up a minute later and read the whole thing again because he'd just forgotten the whole thing. But yeah, talk to us about, like, you wake up. What do you remember? When's the point of like actual clarity? Do you know what I mean? From when you wake up to when you actually start to understand what's happened?
Yeah, so I mean, going back a little bit there, when my mum and dad say that, you know, when the doctors told me that I was paralysed and obviously I wouldn't be able to walk, you know, apparently my reaction, you know, sort of covered my face. Sorry,
That's all right.
Covered my face, and you know, sort of did that. But like I said, I don't remember that. The first thing I really remember finding, because I was only 15.
Yeah.
I was put on a kids ward, and every other child on the ward, you know, was a really small baby or, you know, premature baby and stuff. And then there's me, some big leper.
Everyone's been giving like juice boxes and stuff.
Yeah. So on this ward in Southampton Hospital, there was a charity who used to knit like these blankets for the little kids, you know, you know, ex-big, and then obviously whoever dealt with the scheme at the hospital said, right, we need one that's about, you know, 5 foot long now, and they're like, what? We never done that before. But the first thing I really remember, crazy enough, I was put in a side room at first, and like I said, I wasn't really sure what was going on, and the Asian cleaner came in one morning, and I begged her to help me get up, get out of bed, or just do something. I mean, obviously she didn't understand me. But I was just so confused what was going on that, you know, I was just like, please help me, you know, get me out of bed. I don't really know what's going on. But pretty quite quickly after that, my parents were at the hospital every day. Sorry, I was very lucky. They were both their jobs were very understanding, and sort of enabled them to sort of put their jobs on hold for a while. So they moved into a house that was right next to the hospital.
That's good.
So they could be there every day for me. And quite quickly after, they came in and told me that I'd actually stopped breathing, like you said before, for 9 minutes. So I'm sure every person I've spoken to that has a spinal cord injury as well, you go through an initial phase of, you know, going through all the motions. Why did this happen to me? Mm-hmm. You know, I laid there for hours one day thinking, you know, how many motocross races are there every weekend? There are so many classes, so many riders. You know, there are 10 they do 10 jumps every lap. You know, they do 10 laps a race. You know, you go through your head working out just the possibilities of it. Each step along the way thinking, you know, why did this happen to me? But then, like I said, to be told I stopped breathing for 9 minutes, it very quickly became or switched from a why did this happen to me to right, okay, look, Aaron, this is what's happened. You were so close to dying. So unfortunately, you've got to deal with the being disabled part, look forward and, you know, crack on and get on with the rest of your life. And that's the ethos I have lived for 18 years now. Long time. And that's how I'll continue to live.
Well, I mean, you're a very inspirational person. We've never actually sat down and spoke about this because, like, when we've met before, I've coached you in British GT, which is amazing that you're, like we just spoke before we started chatting on the podcast. Racing's a sport where it's very inclusive, whether you're, like, again, disabled. We've had 2 girls on the podcast. It's not gender specific. It's a very inclusive sport, but we've never actually sat down whilst we were on that day, because there's also so many other guys, you know, there's ex military guys on these Team Brit days. Explain a bit about what Team Brit is and also what it's like to race and just be in a community and surround yourself with people who have been through similar struggles and have a day-to-day handicap as per.
Yeah, so I mean, Team Brit are unique. They're the only race team in the world made up of all drivers with a disability. So there's no other team in the world that has that. And the people in the team are a mix of between physical and psychological challenges. But that being said, we're not a charity. We are a conventional race team, and that's how we want to be seen. So we're funded by sponsors, not charity handouts. And just being in the garage, it's kind of a bit weird because we've all got that shared sort of identity of being disabled. We feel we can take the mickey out of each each person's disabilities.
That's what struck me straight away, is because, like, I feel like there's a bit of a taboo, and I was discussing it with Jordan before you came on, where it's like, obviously we all banter each other as friends, but then it's like, when you get in that environment, especially me saying something to you, or like Jamie would say something to you, and I'm like, is that allowed? Do you know what I mean? It's like a bit of something that people sort of step around, and I found that quite hilarious when you're taking the piss out of each other's disabilities, basically.
Yeah.
But I guess it must be, like you said, it's a nice but weird environment because you don't normally get to be surrounded by people who are going through a similar thing to you or have been through similar things to you.
Yeah.
How's that helped you mentally and through to help your racing career as well? What's that done for you?
Yeah, it's done a lot. Yeah, it kind of feels like you're going into an environment where sometimes in everyday life I kind of feel like I'm being judged a little bit, but going into the Team Brick garage, call it, just you go into an environment where you don't feel judged. You feel sort of a collective identity where everyone is not the same, but they are.
Yeah.
And it's great because all the mechanics are great with us as well. I've never seen someone will come into the team with a brand new disability, which call it they've not seen before.
Yeah.
It's never a question of this might be too difficult for us to deal with, and to help ultimately, or help get them on the track. It's never that mentality. It's always a right. Okay, this is a situation we've got. What do we need to do to get around it? So it's an incredibly empowering environment to be in.
Yeah.
And that being said as well about racing, it's incredibly empowering too, being able to the traditional sort of saying I say is, when I get in the car, I leave my wheelchair behind in the pits, and in some ways it kind of feels like I've left my disability behind because I've left my chair in the pits. I can then control the car as well as the able-bodied driver, whether that be male, female, able-bodied or disabled in the race. I can control that car as well as they can. Like I say, it's an incredibly empowering feeling, and it gives you a great sense of freedom as well.
Oh, absolutely. Something I was actually curious to ask was, going through obviously your childhood, you had this horrendous crash in motocross, which would have been obviously a traumatic experience for not just you but your whole family. Years later, what was the point where you were thinking, I want to get back into motorsport? Because your whole a lot of families would think we're done with this.
Yeah.
And what was that? When was that moment?
Yeah, so it all happened quite quickly, really. So going back even further, so for the first 7 years of my life before I started motocross racing, I was regularly watching my dad go-karting. Or through go-karting, he had a friend who raced a rallycross supercar, which at the time was a four-wheel drive 750 brake horsepower Ford Fiesta.
Right. Okay.
A Ford Fiesta, really? Wow.
So whenever we typically went to Reading Trial Park, where I'd watch my dad go-karting, if we weren't there, typically we were at the mecca of rallycross Linden Hill. Most weekends watching John race. And after my accident, hospitals are quite boring places, to be blunt. After my accident, I sort of said to my dad, have you spoken to John recently? Let's see if we can go and watch him race this weekend, because there's nothing else to do here in hospital. And he was quite hesitant at first, but like a typical kid, they kept pushing him, and eventually he did, and they got on like a house on fire again. And when we were there, so we went to Brands Hatch to watch him race. It wasn't rallycross then. He sort of moved on to circuit racing. When we were there, he told us he'd always owned a business in Bracknell, building and maintaining race cars. But when we were at this race at Brands Hatch, he said, I've actually got two branches to my business now, one in Bracknell and one in Southampton, and we're looking to merge them into Basingstoke. Funny enough, their workshop's 10 minutes from my house now.
Right, okay.
And as publicity for the merge, Aaron, we'd love to build you a car and get you back into racing. So for me, obviously having the racing dream ultimately taken away from me through the motocross accident, to then potentially being able to realise a racing dream again, it just kind of felt like I won the lottery. I was absolutely over the moon.
So if you want to become a racing driver like some of our lovely guests, and you're not really sure how to start because it seems like you need a lot of money and family connections that know the industry, etc., well, now you have the perfect opportunity to prove you have what it takes. And on a completely level playing field, that's why we've created Forseti. Forseti is an online platform that guides you on how to start your racing driver journey and helps you develop your skills to climb up the ladder. We host time attacks every single week, and if you're the fastest driver, we put you straight into a car and integrate you in an established esports team racing against some of the best talent in the world. So if you think you're the best thing since sliced bread and you have what it takes, make sure to sign up at forsetirace.com. Link is also in the description. Back to the podcast.
And how, I mean, viewers are probably wondering how you actually drive the car. So when you get in your McLaren you're now driving, how do you drive? Because we haven't actually explained properly what your disability is. So you're paralyzed, what, from the chest down?
Approximately the nipple line.
Okay. So you're only able to use arms basically to control the car. How do you go about that?
Yeah, so in the Team Brett car, we're using the hand controls are world leading. Behind the steering wheel, where the normal gear up and gear down paddles are, they're not buttons. They're like progressive throttle, progressive brake, and then inside the steering wheel, we've got two grey buttons. The top part of which is used to change up a gear, and the bottom part used to change down again. You said before you've driven our car. You definitely went for the brake to try and downshift, didn't you?
I almost had a massive shunt. I didn't really tell anyone about it, but because obviously, you in their car you can use because Bobby was your teammate. Is he still your teammate?
Not this year. No.
Oh right, okay.
Paul's my teammate this year, but yeah, that's the real beauty of them. You can. There's no adaptation made to the steering wheel at all, so able-bodied drivers can use it. They just have to change gear slightly differently. Someone fully disabled, such as myself, can use it fully on the hand controls. Or Paul, racing this year, he uses a hybrid of the both. So he uses the hand throttle, but he's a amputee on his right leg from just below the knee down. So he uses the hand for throttle, but still uses his left leg for the brake. So that's the amazing thing about them.
Nice.
That you can use full hand controls, no hand controls, or a mix of the two.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, Gus, you've worked with Aaron, coaching. Gus, you've worked. So when it comes to, I was going to ask, when it comes to looking through data and analysis, what was showing on the data compared to someone else fully abled?
I'd say one thing I kept doing wrong when I first started. I mean, I only did 3 or 4 days with you guys.
Yeah.
But like there would be some days where I was coaching like a group of you, so I'd be with you for a bit in a McLaren, and then say on a test day or something, then I'd be in the BMW 1 Series with someone else, and you all have different disabilities, and I'm looking at the data and explaining it like I just always would. Like, yeah, mate, I'll be talking to someone with no left leg, and I'll be like, mate, you need to get that left. You need to start left foot braking, or you need to I'll be like, you need to be more delicate with that, with your brake foot or whatever, and then I'll be like, oh god, what am I talking about? But I'd say that was embarrassing for me, because I only realised it about halfway through a day, because they were too polite to say anything to me. Yeah. And I was like, oh my god, I'm completely, because I just go into my own world when I'm doing data, and then because you're also quick, and the data looks similar to what I'm looking at with any other driver, I'm coaching you like any other driver. But I'd say the main I'd say struggle, but it's something you can get used to. Like when I went out in the car, it's really hard because I've, over years of my life, been lucky enough to race go-karts from 9 and cars from 14. We've developed a huge finesse, like with my feet on the pedals and hands on the steering wheel, and everything's very subconscious for me. But when I tried the hand controls, I'm absolutely mashing the brake, like to absolute, because you imagine you've got to put, say, 130 kilos through your left foot, usually to brake as hard as you can, as hard as you should. On the hand controls, that's like just a little squeeze, like as if you're changing down. So it's really difficult to have that finesse. And I remember that was a slight struggle, or like one of the points for opportunity with you when we were going through the data. And again, I was like coaching you, like, oh, come on, mate, we need to be a bit more finesse on this brake pedal. And then I was just like, well, actually, it's a lot harder than that.
Yeah, you got in, you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You definitely were using the pedals, weren't you, for throttle and brake, and you went for what you thought was a downshift. And well, that's the brake.
No, so what I did, yeah. So these guys, I think on my first day with you guys, I got in the McLaren, and I'd just done British GT as well. So Jamie's to being like, oh, Gus will go out, set a fast time, really quick guy. And I went out for my out lap in the wet in this McLaren at Alton Park, which, if you don't know, is like a pretty suicidal track if you make a mistake. And I went into Druids at Alton Park, and I was like consciously thinking about it for the first half of the lap. So I'm purposely like, making sure I don't touch that brake pedal that I think is the downshift button. And then I went to literally just lightly brake into Druids and like understeer through, and then I just smashed the brake trying to change down from fifth to fourth, and I almost completely lost the car straight into the wall. That would have been a really good advert for me, wouldn't it? Pro driver completely lobs the car straight away. But when you first got in the car, I mean, you hadn't have driven before you had that crash. So I guess that's all you've ever known in a car is driving with hand controls, right?
Yeah.
But do you ever meet people who, through Team Brit, who have had an accident? And I think there was a guy who had like a serious car crash in his adult life, and then has had to switch to hand controls. What's the struggle there? I mean, that must be super difficult. I mean, it was so hard for me to get my head around as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, being paralysed from 15, I've only ever driven my hands. I think in some ways that's an advantage.
Yeah.
Because, well, obviously yourself, you've only ever driven with your feet. So to then change it, you have to consciously think, no, right, not that, right, that, that sort of thing. Whereas for me, I don't have to do that, which was quite nice. So I had my 16th birthday whilst I was in hospital, and my occupational therapist came to me one day and she said, Darren, disabled people can learn to drive at 16. Can they?
Yeah.
I actually so we rung around a few driving lesson providers, and got so the BSM instructor we found, he used to come to the hospital. I used to sort of check myself out, jump in the car, go for my driver lesson. Then the nurse used to bring my wheelchair back out, and I'd go back to being a normal hospital inmate.
Yeah.
So quite a funny story that way. But yeah, the hand controls I've used, and I do use the ones in my road car, are very different to the Team Brit ones I use now. So there is some adjustment that I have to make every time I do get in the McLaren. And so I raced an E30 BMW first. That was my first race car, and then I raced an E36 compact as well. So the E30 had the same controls I've got in my road car, but the compact was completely different again. And in them cars, I used to use a manual gearbox, either with an electronic clutch system, or later then had a specially engineered one, whereby there was a motorbike clutch lever on an extended gear stick, and that lever acted exactly the same as a motorbike clutch. So that's fully out, halfway is sort of biting point, and fully in. So the previous way with the electric system that I had, used to have to press a button, wait for the motor to pull the clutch pedal in, change gear, let the button go, and then obviously wait for the motor to let the clutch back out.
Manual?
But, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
It was the two championships, they were production-based championships.
Right, okay.
So they had to be how the car came out of the factory with the E30 in 1989, so the car was older than I am.
Right, okay.
Which back then was only a 4-speed automatic, which I did try at first, but it hit the red line. It only had 4 gears. It hit the red line at 105 mile an hour. And one race I did at Silverstone, I was there was me just pop off the limiter, and I'm just watching cars drive past.
So what's a unique challenge that, apart from the obvious things like using hand controls and stuff, what's a unique challenge for you as opposed to any other driver when you're driving these cars, or isn't there? Have you ever had anything that's super weird fail or happen, or something where you think that wouldn't happen to anyone else?
The pit stops would be quite different.
I was going to say there's driver changes, aren't there?
Yeah, the driver changes.
I was just in terms of your question, Gus, no, there's nothing out of the ordinary that has happened to me that maybe wouldn't happen to anyone else. But yeah, they present a challenge, but in order to get our race license, we have to film ourselves and send a video off to MSUK to prove we can evacuate a car from being completely strapped in and stuff to being out on the floor next to the car in under. So when I did mine in 2007, it was under 7 seconds, but I think that's got slightly longer. Really? I think it's under 10.
That's challenging for anyone.
Quick, yeah.
Yeah. Driver changes do present a challenge because obviously the car comes to a stop, I'm undoing my belts and whatever else.
Yeah.
And then, so in that, whilst I'm doing my belts and stuff, the mechanic has then got to bring my chair around to the door of the car, open the door, bring my chair around into the gap to be where I need it to be. And obviously I need to get into it as quick as I can and obviously wheel myself out of the way. So then, in British GT or we're racing in British Endurance Championship this year, then the petrol gun can go on. Then when the petrol gun comes off and the next driver's in, so Paul this year he uses a wheelchair, will then push his chair around, or the driver's door will come up, pushes back around the driver's door, and then obviously do what it needs to do to get in, and then obviously a mechanic needs to move the chair back out of the way. So it does give us some extra stuff to think about, but quite nicely in British GT there's a minimum pit stop time.
There is, yeah.
So and that's obviously from pit entry to pit exit line. So I think roughly typically it'll give you about a minute to do all that you need to do, which is usually enough as long as nothing drastic goes wrong. Like I miss my wheelchair and I'm lying there on the pit lane like a beach turtle going, pick me up.
Mate, I remember on the test day, I was just hacking around in your wheelchair when you were driving, and then you came in and you couldn't get out of the car or something, or maybe it was one of the other guys.
Well, because you were in,
but because I was in it, mate. I was lethal in that thing. They wheelie, so mate, getting used to a wheelchair is really difficult.
Yeah.
A question I wanted to ask, because I think and sorry, I keep talking about with different struggles and different things and whatever, but it's I guess the reality of life and the situation you've been presented with. But I've got one of my biggest fans, Alfie. Shout out to Alfie if he's watching this. He's a young kid. He was born with cerebral palsy, and he's super intelligent. He's lovely to be around. He's just lights up your day when he's there. I love having him at the races. What's your advice to someone like him, or basically anyone that's had a life-changing thing happen to them, or feels like they're sometimes a bit of an anomaly? Like you said, you feel like people judge you for your disability when you're going around your daily life. What advice would you give to a kid or an adult going through something like that, and what mindset have you adopted to overcome this shift from why me, all these negative thoughts, why me, why this, what are the chances of this happening, to this gratefulness that you're here and, you can do amazing things with your life? What advice would you give?
Hit me with all the tough questions today.
I know, I hit you with that 3 in 1, but yeah.
I think my honest advice would be just the same as everyone else. If you've got a dream, just follow that dream. We're in a very lucky time now where obviously sim racing is incredibly accessible to people, and there are adaptations out there to simulators, so they can be adapted to hand controls. Computers are a lot easier to tell, to expect a throttle from here rather than there, than a car is, because obviously car ECUs are wired to think in one way because that's the only way they're ever sold, but computers are a lot easier to do that. And that's one of the really nice things about Team Brit as well. One of the things they do, if there's they have a new driver who maybe has never driven with hand controls or never driven with the Team Brit controls before, they'll take the simulator along to the meeting or test day, whichever they're at, and they'll let people pound around on the simulator for a good hour. And then obviously if they have a crash, it's not the end of the world. And it gives them a real chance to get used to them. And then when they jump in the real car, the controls on the simulator are exactly the same as the real car. So then they'll be a lot more used to it than obviously if they jump in cold turkey. But yeah, my advice would just be, if you have a dream, just follow it. There shouldn't be anything extra in there. with technology the way it is these days, and things are only. It's kind of scary how quickly technology comes along. Things are only going to get better.
Yeah, and I'm not on the point of simulators. We encourage everyone that asks how to get into racing. It's such a good route nowadays. So they actually have hand controls for simulators as well, adaptable controls.
I believe MSUK are going to be sort of releasing a simulator for disabled people as well.
Amazing.
Hopefully open their eyes up. Plug Forseti.
So if you want to become a racing driver like some of our lovely guests.
Yeah, Forseti, that's right. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
So, yeah, hopefully, I mean, there's probably you can probably count on two hands how many active disabled racing drivers there are in the UK at the minute, like I say, who are active. But, hopefully that will open the talent pool up, and it'd be great to see more disabled drivers on the grid.
Would be. Yeah. Racing in British GT is one of the biggest series in the UK. Big, like, a lot of attention, unbelievably fast cars. What was your experience like in general? What was, it must have been just like unreal to experience that. What was sort of like the highlight of the year? You racing at tracks like Spa, Silverstone, got proper F1 tracks. Talk us about, that whole experience.
Yeah, no, like you said, it was absolutely incredible. And I can't say anything bad about the organising club, the SRO. They were brilliant at making sure everything was accessible. If and when we're on the podium, she'd make all of the drivers stand on the floor rather than some up on the podium, and then obviously me just sat on ground level.
Nice.
It was a crazy just consequence of event. Consequence. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but crazy chance of events that. Yeah. So it was in Good Friday 2006 that I had my accident. So I was able-bodied for 15 and a half years, and then it was Good Friday on 2022, so 15 and a half years after my accident, that I was lining up on the biggest GT championship in England, racing a McLaren 570 SGT4. So
mad.
From spending half my life in able-bodied to then half my life in a wheelchair. That anniversary was to do the first British GT race of the 2022 season. So yeah, that was mega. Yeah. But no, my highlight of the year by far, and quite easy to tell you about, was when we went to Spa. We managed to get third overall in GT4.
Wow.
And
amazing.
we won Pro-Am as well. We managed to beat the Pro-Am grid that year was quite small at some rounds, but we managed to beat Matt Topham and Darren Turner. Bobby, bless him, he had to fight off Darren Turner for the best part of an hour.
Wow.
He literally the drive of his life, and he managed to hold him off. And such a my first ever visit to Spa, and there won't ever be any better way to remember it.
And Darren Turner, by the way, is a factory driver for Aston Martin who's won Le Mans.
One of the best GT drivers out there for years, so that was some result.
Yeah.
What was it like going up Eau Rouge for the first time? What was your reaction to that?
Well, we did a track walk on the Thursday evening.
Oh, of course,
I've got my dad took his electric scooter, and I just wheelied the footplate of my chair onto the like the foot bit of the scooter. And
I was just going to say, you don't want the brakes to fail at the top.
I can then just control the throttle and the brakes on the electric scooter.
Oh, right, okay.
Like as it drags my wheelchair along.
Nice.
But even that wasn't strong enough to pull me up there. I'm like, this is steep.
It's steep. It's actually. Yeah. I remember walking up it for the first time. I was knackered by the top.
Did you wheel round apart from Eau Rouge? Or did you use the scooter?
No, I used the scooter.
Oh, right, okay. There's one thing I've noticed with a lot of pretty much all the Team Brick guys is none of them use a electric one.
No. Everybody is in a manual. That's not to say anyone with an electric wheelchair should be put off, but because there's no reason why, if you have an electric chair, there's no reason you couldn't join the team. But yeah, currently, every driver within the team uses a manual wheelchair.
Okay. It must be amazing, ridiculous exercise. I suppose you just develop all the muscles to get used to it, right? But like constantly, again, wheeling up gradients and stuff like that must be challenging.
At first it's tough, but as with everything, the more and more you do it, the fitter and fitter you get, and the easier and easier it becomes.
So coming back to Spa, was there a moment of like, and again, you said you had this 15-year anniversary. Has there been like a pivotal moment where you just thought like, wow, like I can't believe I'm here?
Yeah, there's been loads.
Yeah.
So yeah, that first weekend, like you say, on the halfway anniversary of being able-bodied and then being disabled to race, like I say, in the biggest GT championship in England. That on that anniversary, that was a real pinch me moment. To then, obviously being on the podium at Spa, where so many F1 legends have stood and will stand in years to come as well. Then last year we were lucky enough to do a few rounds of McLaren Trophy Europe. We managed to get a class win at the Nürburgring, so another one to sit on that podium was pretty incredible as well. So, and hopefully there's many more to come. But it's Team Brit's goal, and now I didn't share the goal when I first joined the team, but it's now my goal as well. The team's goal is to be the first team of all disabled drivers to race on the main grid at Le Mans.
That'd be amazing.
So yeah, I think it's a massive goal.
Yeah,
and we'll take a huge amount of effort to get there. But with the leadership of the team and the drivers which we have in the team at the minute, it really is a goal for everybody that we're all striving towards, and everyone has the most motivation to get there. So I think we will. It's just a case of when.
Yeah, nice. It's amazing. Even Le Mans is a huge goal for drivers in general, just to be able to get the partners, the sponsors. It's such a huge race. Something I was going to ask as well was, I completely forgot. Usually we have notes.
Yeah.
that we were supposed to write down.
I'll fill in a quick gap. How far away do you think we are from that happening? Getting an all Team Brit team into Le Mans?
Well, it's very hard to put a sort of timestamp on it.
Is the only problem, I guess, is funding.
Funding. We the way obviously Le Mans rules have changed in recent years. They've opened up to GT3 cars, haven't they? So Team Brit need to find and buy a GT3 car as well that would be eligible to race there. And then it's as with everyone and anything, it's all about funding, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's a common topic in all our podcast funding.
We always bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask as well, on a really happy topic, what's the worst moment you've had in your racing career so far? Or the biggest shock?
Apart from your crash, obviously, in motocross.
Apart from that one. That was so. Since then, boom. Since that one, for sake.
So
in the last 15 years,
So last year, British GT Silverstone 500. We're closing in on the last half an hour of the race, and coming into Maggots and Beckett's, I had a spin as you go for the first right. I think that's Beckett's, and then I rejoined the track. Unsafely, I hold my hands up. It wasn't safe in any way, and I got collected by one of the other cars on the track.
Brit car has had a spin and then has rejoined, and that might look really, really stupid. Why has he done that? You are so blind in a race car. You've got to rejoin. He's obviously gone off, hit the wall. He's looking to his left. You can see the driver looking, but there's such a big blind spot in that pillar. He's pulled away thinking he's clear. Then Simon Orange comes into shot, nowhere to go.
So that was a pretty low point, because not only we were in an amazing place in the race, just overtaken the car that came second overall in GT4, and I think we're class leaders. Don't quote me on that. I'm not completely sure. I just overtaken that car. Was holding a really strong position. So yeah, just to have this accident, I was gutted. Not just for losing the position. We were a really strong race position we were in. There was a huge amount of damage to the car. It was incredible. Another real sense of guilt to all of the mechanics for the amount of work that I then had to give them.
We've all been there.
Then to sponsors, supporters as well. You kind of feel like you've let the team down, don't you? Yeah, it's a really tough position to be in.
I saw that crash obviously earlier, and it was a difficult one. Maggots Beckett's, if you have a spin there where you did, it's quite difficult to rejoin because you have cars on different lines there. You know, some go wide through the first right, some go position more for the left. You were kind of, it was a difficult place to rejoin. And when I saw it, it was actually quite lucky where not lucky, but the car hit you at the back. It was very
really
close to go. Yeah, it was very close to driver's door. So at least it wasn't that. But the crashes happen like it's just it just happens, and the immediate reaction is, I've let everyone down, sponsors, family, myself. But at the end of the day, it's motorsport. Like, you got to be prepared for these
If you never
things.
crash, you're not trying hard enough, and you're not learning either.
Yeah. I mean, I had a crash at Alton Park the first round, and I look back at it multiple times thinking, could I have done something like, but there was a spinning car ahead in the wet, spray, and I just collected a McLaren straight away, and it was, not fun.
Like you say, in hindsight as well, there's a big tarmac area, the opposite side of where I was rejoining. I could have just floored it and gone straight across the track, and I would have been absolutely fine. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But how do you overcome that after you've had your crash at Silverstone and you're thinking, I'm letting everyone down, blah blah blah. How do you stop yourself getting into a downward spiral because as all drivers we go, something like that happens and you go, am I good enough? And you start to question yourself, you start to question your talent, why am I here? Like, do I deserve to be here type thing? Like, I've let everyone down, I've cost the team everything, blah, blah, blah. How do you stop yourself going downhill mentally and pick yourself up?
It's hard.
Yeah.
I didn't have long either, because it was quite quickly after that crash at Silverstone that the team decided to pivot and enter Bobby and I into McLaren Trophy Europe. So I think it was only 2 or 3 weeks after the accident that we were then in the south of France racing at Paul Ricard.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, when I was there, I really struggled.
Yeah.
To refine sort of my confidence in both myself and the car. But we're quite lucky in Team Brit, and over the past year, I've been working with a sports psychologist to help me, refine myself ultimately, and use different ways of thinking and different psychological interventions to enable me to get back to my best. So incredibly grateful to everyone within the team for obviously providing that resource.
You must have gained such a resilience from, I mean, from when you were 15, because for that to happen to you at 15 and to turn your life around and, get on with it and prove to everyone else and anyone that's suffering with, be it an illness or cerebral palsy or paralysis, you've proved that it's possible to still chase your dreams and get to the top level of a sport and get podiums in it. How have you trained your mind to get the best out of yourself and believe that it's possible?
I'm not sure.
It's do any meditation, nothing to answer your questions.
Couple Stellas, get in the car.
Gus's massive secret.
Yeah,
they're right there.
That's me.
Yeah.
It's just a case of believing in yourself, believe in your ability. Maybe everybody has different ways of preparing themselves. So I know Sebastian Vettel used to, sit there in his helmet and shut his visor and shut his eyes and, visualize him doing a lap of the track so he can sort of picture all his braking and turning points, etc. But that be, everybody does it differently. Before a race, I'll take myself away, just do some deep breathing, just to calm myself as much. It's kind of weird when you sort of calm yourself down to then go to, in racing because of the agenda. Yeah, I think that's just an example of controlling the controllables, isn't it?
Yeah.
You control what you can do, not thinking or doing what someone else's do, because you can't control what they do. So you just control what you do, and then you'll bring the best out of yourself because you're just focused on what you can do and ultimately what you can achieve.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Hunden.
Hunden.
100. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I think I'm done.
Yeah. No, but thank you so much for coming on today, Aaron. It's
Thank
been
you
really
very
nice
much for having me.
It's really nice to meet you and hear your amazing, like, inspirational story. I think a lot of people will find it, amazingly interesting. And apologies for this room to be the most friendly for disabled access.
Yeah, wheelchair friendly room in the world. Fantastic. Say hi, Aaron.
Where's it go?
Or do you want to go down back first?
Yeah, backwards.
It's going to be interesting. Okay, right, ready? Are you ready? There you go. Hang on. Oh,
You need to go
Christ.
right.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Right. Oh, Christ on a bike. Da-da. Right.
I'm alive. I'm alive.
So now he's made it. You can have a look in there if you want.
Just bins. It's only bins, not only fans.